all in this together, and there's a lot of disagreements among us, and we often don't get along so well, but politically, I think we should work together as much as possible instead of splitting into little factions, because we share most of the same interests. And I think the best way to do that is to build bridges instead of burning them.
If you want to say, like, trans people have, like, a leg up when it comes to being able to give good take on trans issues, yeah, sure. I don't think it makes them automatically right, though. I think that's silly. Does Candace Owens automatically have more of a point on race issues than me? When she said George Floyd deserved to die, do I just have to look at that and go like, well, like, no, of course not, obviously. When Blair White says non-binary people are, like, destroying trans legitimacy or whatever, like, no, of course not. I disagree with that. I do agree with what Contra is saying here, but the problem is she's implying that I disagree with this, and I'm not getting defensive about it because I don't disagree with it.
You know, believe marginalized people is a norm that is encouraged in leftist spaces for good reason, much like believe victims or believe women. And these norms were established to counterbalance the mainstream tendency, which is not to listen to marginalized people or to victims or to women. But any norm can be abused, and the blunt fact of the matter is, sometimes marginalized people are wrong. Sometimes people calling themselves victims are obscuring a more complicated situation. And it's even happened once or twice that a woman has lied.
Yeah, we should probably talk about the Contra thing, right? There's drama, you're tired, please no thought, slime stream part 2. Did I not demonstrate yesterday that I am, as they say, built different? I wouldn't worry about it. Vaush, I was proven wrong. I thought you were hyperbolizing when you said people were ceding ground to JKR. I would say that the behavior of the online left broadly in the past couple of days has been one of the biggest secessions of ground to transphobes that I've seen since I started my YouTube career, which is pretty impressive, I have to say. I guess since a lot of the people doing it are themselves trans, I guess that they're right, you know? It's a self-determination thing, right? You know, I mean, if they wanna, I don't know. Seems dumb, but not the strategy I'd go with. But I'd see a therapist after this because the gaslighting give you some bad psych damage. I wouldn't worry about me, okay? Yeah, Vaush, I thought your apologia argument was weird at first, but I kind of get it now. Well, I'm about to repeat my argument for the umpteenth time because we're still getting a lot of people who are in my community who don't seem to understand what I believe. But okay, well, let's get to it then. 2 hours ago, Contrapoints blocked me on Twitter. The bridge is burnt, I'm afraid. Tragic. Now, like I said last night while streaming, if the bridge is to be burnt, it's not going to be from me. It would be from her, which is what happened. To give a brief summary, the basic gist of what happened is, a few days ago, I tweeted some ironic misogyny while dragging J.K. Rowling, and she screenshotted it and made a big deal of it. And then a bunch of people on the online left, rather than like making fun of J.K. Rowling or pointing out that she's dumb or wrong or gay or whatever, attacked me for the ironic misogyny, which I'm okay with being criticized for the ironic misogyny, but the way in which the criticism took place made it feel like the left was kind of implicitly ceding ground to J.K. Rowling by agreeing with her in that my behavior sort of warranted her general denunciation of trans people. And that, I think, is a problem. So, I have not been defending the ironic misogyny, and people who have been watching me through this drama can attest to that, by the way. I haven't been. It hasn't been about that. That's just not what I've been focusing on at all. The only position I really have on that is that I don't think it's that big of a deal, and by God, I will stand by that point. But not like saying it's necessary or like morally good or whatever. I think those are very different things. You know, we all have different levels of what we think is acceptable edginess. All of us engage in some level of acceptable edginess. Have you guys watched a Contrapoints video? It's not like there isn't ironic misogyny in there. We have arbitrary thresholds. So, that happens. Anyhow, people keep insistently arguing as though, well, I don't like the arguments a lot of people are using, I'm okay with being criticized for the ironic misogyny, but a lot of people, I think, again, are doing that ceding ground to J.K. Rowling thing. So one of the people doing that was Kat Blaque on Twitter, who posted this really long tweet thread, which was essentially criticizing me with arguments that I felt were pretty bad. Now, I have now my opinion of Kat Blaque is not at all mixed, but at the time I had a mixed opinion of Kat Blaque, and I thought I don't really want to drag this drama out, you know? I'd rather settle it privately. So I DM'd Kat Blaque saying that I disagreed with her and asked if she would be interested in hearing my explanation for my behavior. Now, those DMs have been made public by her since, and I'll get to that, but you can look over those DMs if you want. They're public. I literally went over every single one of them on stream yesterday, and I think, and I believe this is about as objective an assessment as you can get, that I was very good faith, forthcoming, interested in talking, polite, you know? At the very least, like early on. Later on, the conversation, you know, degenerated and we got, you know, more shouty. But I really feel like a fair reading of that DM exchange between myself and her, which lasted a full hour, would indicate that I was engaging in good faith and that she was engaging in monstrously bad faith, like really bad faith. Her, like, she would admit she wasn't listening to me. She said it was arrogant of me to even assume I could ever have a point over her because I'm cis and she's trans. Just stuff like that, you know, like really, really bad stuff. But anyway, frustrated, the conversation ended, and I didn't want to make a big deal of it, you know, like I didn't want to make it public. I wasn't going to talk about it on stream. I vague posted in chat after the convo saying, I had this convo with someone, it was so stupid, oh my god, I'm so glad this wasn't public or you all would have killed yourselves, you know. But I never was going to say it was Kat Blaque. Then Kat Blaque made a, this is not a joke, 100 tweet thread characterizing me in, I think, a very dishonest way based on the DM exchange that we had the previous night. And then when I tweeted about that at all, she dropped all the DMs, leaking an entire hour's worth of exchange in private messages. Just, phew. Not only did she drop all of the DMs, she also said, for no reason at all, that she and I used to sext over Twitter, which is true, but I don't know how that's relevant, and it felt kind of weird to just bring that up, and I feel like I would get flack if I brought that up, like out of nowhere, if I had a disagreement with like a woman, you know, like who I was arguing with. And then later she deleted this, of course, because like how could she not? But she like made comments about my penis unprompted, which again is very weird. It's really, really, really strange. Because, you know, she was talking about how she had sexted me before, and then, like, she posted this. First of all, I'm a social justice black mage. Do I like white dick? Not necessarily my top choice, but I'll settle for it. This is very strange. Saying this while being black does not make it any more cute, I have to say. I was underwhelmed in this particular case, though. Maybe Kat Blaque likes small penises? I don't know. I don't know why she wouldn't think mine is cool, but whatever. She seemed to like it at the time. Anyway, I think this is a very, very weird thing to tweet. Can we acknowledge that? Like, it is funny, and I have a good sense of humor about it, but imagine if I had a disagreement with a female content creator, and in response to us burning a bridge publicly, I leaked that years ago we used to flirt, and then insulted her pussy. I would get in a lot of trouble for that. Like, that would follow me for a long time, you know? Again, I can roll with the punches, but I just, yeah, that behavior to me, yeah, geez, you know? Yeah, I would be like excised from the online like that would be really, really bad. But look, the point is, I think that Kat Blaque, I think there are a few negative things I could say about Kat Blaque that like wouldn't be true, honestly. Kat Blaque never had a point on me, admitted she wasn't listening to my arguments, and just misrepresented me the entire time. Again, I went over it all last stream. I can't go over it again. You can look at it if you want. But then the really frustrating thing happened. The frustrating thing is that in the midst of all of this, you know, of course, everyone's jumping on me. In the midst of all of this, Contrapoints jumps on me too, which I really didn't expect, because Contrapoints usually makes an effort to not engage in Twitter drama. I think she deleted these tweets, which she does often, but the Contrapoints deleted Twitter account has me covered here. Contra says, I think you should think about what she's saying here instead of getting really defensive about her correctly pointing out that your perspective on this is limited by your not being trans and not a woman. So I'm going to break down why I think these tweets from Contrapoints are really bad. I think they start out being misinformed and end being bad faith, and it's something I've never seen. Something I've never seen from her before, which is really weird and disappointing. But anyway, I want to explain why, because I think Contrapoints is unambiguously in the wrong here, and I genuinely, sincerely don't think I did anything wrong in this interaction. And I just want that to be known because I really respect Contra. And if my falling out with her is going to be a public affair, then I damn sure want to make sure that my account of the issue is public. Her first thing here is kind of misleading because I have never pointed out that my perspective on these issues isn't limited by me being a cis guy. I've said that on and off stream a lot of times. Lived experiences can give people a better understanding of these issues. My only point is that they don't make you automatically correct on these issues. That's the only point that I have. If you want to say, like, trans people have, like, a leg up when it comes to being able to give good take on trans issues, yeah, sure. I don't think it makes them automatically right, though. I think that's silly. Does Candace Owens automatically have more of a point on race issues than me? When she said George Floyd deserved to die, do I just have to look at that and go like, well, like, no, of course not, obviously. When Blair White says non-binary people are, like, destroying trans legitimacy or whatever, like, no, of course not. I disagree with that. I do agree with what Contra is saying here, but the problem is she's implying that I disagree with this. And I'm not getting defensive about it because I don't disagree with it. Then she continues, doing edgy, ironic misogyny while defending trans people magnifies the grain of truth in what TERFs say about there being misogyny in trans activism. So, while I disagree with this does at least speak to the point that I'm trying to make broadly. So this would be something that I had wished I could talk with her about. You know, like, I wish I could have had this conversation with her to explain why, because I don't think there's a grain of truth here, you know? I think they'll find that grain of truth anywhere because they just make it up. They make up the grain of truth. It's not a grain of truth. It's a made up, like, yeah, I don't believe that. And then she said, maybe your tweet at J.K. Rowling just didn't land the way you wanted. Okay, fine, it happens, but why get so defensive about reasonable criticism? Now, the thing that is weird about this to me is I remember reasonable criticism being a term Natalie ascribed to the bad faith engagement she got on Twitter in her canceling video, right? She would talk about in that video how when mobs of people were mad at her over pretty fake drama online, you know, they would not directly address the argument she had or treat her in good faith, but allude to the hurt of others, the reasonable criticism. You know, it's a way of gesturing at an argument without making one. And it's a way of substituting a real criticism with, well, anger posturing as a criticism.
You can pretend you just want an apology. You can pretend you're just a concerned citizen who wants the person to improve. You can pretend you're simply offering up criticism when what you're really doing is attacking a person's career and reputation out of spite, envy, revenge. I mean, it could be any motivation.
That language to me is, well, it's a little bit concerning, but it gets a lot worse, unfortunately. Oh dear. Well, you know. So I respond, how many reasonable criticisms of you have you, knowing what others don't, thought unreasonable? I've talked about all this before and will continue to, and I'm happy to hear out Kat or anyone else, but I disagree with her here and I have reason to think little of her opinions. I think this is a fair tweet. All I'm saying is that, you know, maybe these criticisms aren't as reasonable as you think they are, and I'm happy to talk about it and hear out others' opinions, but I am, you know, I do believe that I'm in the right here, which is fair. And then I continue. With respect, the arguments you give in your videos support my position here. I do strongly believe this. And with all the associated context, this site really isn't the best place to speak on it with nuance. The reason I say this is because I don't want to argue with Contrapoints publicly on Twitter about something like this, you know? Like, what good outcome are we going to draw from that? I'm hoping we can, like, talk on stream or privately. Like, it's not about a content thing, just, you know, anywhere but Twitter. And then I say, I'm extremely confident you'd agree with me if you were fully caught up. This is where Nat starts getting worse, I think. It just strikes me as off that you're extremely confident you definitely know better than a trans woman who's been doing this activism for over a decade, and it kind of compounds my discomfort with the "women be quieter" tweet. This is a very, very strange argument to make. I don't understand what this characterization is supposed to be. if I disagree with a person, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, we have a disagreement and it's like, oh, well, they're a trans woman who's been doing activism for over a decade. Never mind. I guess I don't disagree. Like, this is identity politics arguments from a person who I generally not associated with identity politics arguments. It's woke skull behavior. And this is the same language that people who attacked her on Twitter would engage in to allude to some kind of broader, like the trans community has problems with you, Contra. That kind of stuff.
Believe marginalized people is a norm that is encouraged in leftist spaces for good reason, much like believe victims or believe women. And these norms were established to counterbalance the mainstream tendency, which is not to listen to marginalized people or to victims or to women. But any norm can be abused, and the blunt fact of the matter is, sometimes marginalized people are wrong. Sometimes people calling themselves victims are obscuring a more complicated situation.
And then I say, is that really your argument? That I, by way of being cis, couldn't possibly be correct in a disagreement on trans issues with a trans person? I was always under the impression you valued the quality of the argument. Now, she didn't explicitly say this. She did implicitly say this. I hope anyone who watches my content would understand what the real message is here. And it becomes even more clear soon what she's really saying as soon as we see, like, I haven't heard any arguments yet, only your assurance you're extremely confident that you're correct. Contrapoints jumped in here without knowing what my argument was. She jumped in here, Contra, a person who is generally pretty averse to getting involved in drama, without knowing what my position was. So given that she doesn't actually know what my position is, that she's still saying that she thinks it weird that I'm confident I'm correct, this to me reads as her basically saying that me being a cis guy means that I can't have an opinion on this. That's kind of the implicit message there. If my confidence in being right is a bad thing and a warning sign, but she also doesn't even know what my argument is and therefore doesn't know whether my confidence is founded, the implication is that no level of confidence could be justified. No matter what argument I have, by default, it's not right to be confident. Very strange. And then she says, and I don't think extreme confidence is warranted. Men who are extremely confident they know more than women what is and isn't misogyny don't have a great track record. This is just woke skull did pull. I'm really sorry. These arguments are bad, and they're used by abusive people online to feign arguments when they don't actually have arguments to make. This, by the way, is the argument TERFs make, and Natalie has pointed that out in her video on TERFs. In her video on TERFs, she has explicitly said that TERFs will abuse this language of men don't have a right to speak in our issues by broadly, essentializing that categorization and using it as a way of reinforcing transphobic positions. She's explicitly said that. This is verbatim a contradictory argument to points that she's made.
But I've had cis feminists of my race and class tell me that I have no idea what it's like to be talked over and interrupted by men.
Actually, Kropotkin.
Or to experience street harassment, or to have to treat every first date like a potentially life-threatening situation. And it's just bizarre to me that they think that. Like, what do you think my experience in the world is? You think men treat me as their equal? You think street harassers are gonna treat me with dignity and respect because I have a Y chromosome? I think the reason some trans women feel the need to argue that trans women never experience male privilege is that a lot of TERFs use male privilege as a proxy for calling us men. I suspect the reason this is such a major talking point for many gender-critical feminists is that there's an element here of stolen valor, the sense of injustice that people are claiming their identity without experiencing their oppression.
Now, it turns out, and I only learned this afterwards, the reason Contra's doing all of this is because she's friends with Kat. I'm pretty confident Kat must have DM'd her privately and egged her into joining the conversation. As tempting as it is to blame Kat for that, I'm very disappointed that Natalie would compromise on her positions like this because a friend encouraged her to. That is not good. That is not good behavior. I think that's very disappointing. Anyway, I continue. If I wasn't capable of extreme confidence in disagreements I have with people whose lived experiences differ from mine, I wouldn't be able to argue against TERFs. Noticed how her arguments are attacks on the legitimacy of my right to have a position on this, and mine are just a defense of my ability to have a position. I'm not even getting to argue my point here. Her point isn't that my point is wrong. She doesn't know my point. Her point is that I don't have the right to disagree. Anyway, I continue. Also, I can't help you if you're jumping into this without knowing my arguments. What do I even say to that? I still don't even know what I'm supposed to say that, really. I mean, like, geez, you know? We're almost done. She tweeted this out broadly. I don't think she ever answered this. I don't think she responded to this one. But she did her own vague tweet publicly after that. So is idpol the new SJW? Have we moved on from woke so soon? I think this is also a weird tweet, considering that Natalie has explicitly argued against the cynical invocation of identity politics as a way of silencing people. Before, she's literally made the arguments I'm making here. And then I get the in before the delete, before she deletes, which is fun, you know. Then she says, are you done being mad some trans women disagree being misogynistic is actually an intricate strategy for being our savior? Listen to the language of this tweet. Don't you think there's a lot of venom in here? This isn't my argument. She's admitted to not knowing my argument. So, like, weird. When have I said any of this? And the wording here betrays so much venom. I said, I would be if I was ever mad at that, Nat, if that was ever the argument. And she says, so you don't defend the misogyny, but you do defend misogyny in the service of saving the transgenders? I honestly don't get it. She's admitted she doesn't know my argument. And I say, I don't know why you, a person who generally avoids drama on this hell side, are actively dragging me when you've admitted you have no f***ing idea what my arguments are. You don't normally do this. I respect you. I'm happy to type up stuff and send it in DMs, no response needed. Again, guys, the bridge being burnt here is not on me. I'm trying everything that I can, you know? She says, because it's maddening to watch you pose as the savior of the transgenders, then do edgy misogyny in the name of that, and finally melt down when a trans woman who knows more than you about this and criticizes you for it. There is so much venom in this tweet. It is unbelievable. So much antagonism, which I've never received from her before. I don't pose as the savior of the transgenders. I have arguments, and that's all I can ever have, really. I don't do edgy misogyny in the name of anything. I did it because I thought it was funny. That's not really a moral defense. Like, that's just the honest truth. I don't think it's an intricate or necessary component of trans liberation. I'm not having a meltdown. If anything, she's the one demonstrating uncharacteristic behavior here. And then this, when a trans woman who knows more than you about this criticizes you for it, but she doesn't know what my argument is. So, and I say, is this not what the woke skull type said to you? I'm not trying to be anyone's savior. I'm a guy with arguments which you've admitted you're unaware of. And still, somehow, you have strong opinions on them. I'll continue to believe what I believe until posed a better argument. I don't know what I can say besides that. And now we're just about done. Oh, no, wait, that is it. The only other thing she said is, if only we were smart enough to see it, in response to this first tweet, which I didn't see and respond to it. Vaush, I think how much energy you've been putting in defending yourself sends a different message than what you're trying to send. If you believe that trying to explain your side of an issue where you're facing harassment and defend yourself is you giving a bad look, you're an abuse apologizer. I'm really sorry. I don't know how else to phrase that. It's you just are. That argument can be applied to any, like, is defending yourself against, like, misinformation suspicious? What does that normalize? Honestly. Massive victim blaming energy. Oh, and by the way, a severe condemnation to Contrapoints. Kat Blaque sexually harassed me. I'm really sorry. Just out of nowhere, talking about a person's dick because you sexted them before and you're having a public falling out with them. Like, all the behavior Kat Blaque engaged in is unambiguously abusive, gaslighty, and entailed sexual harassment. Contrapoints used arguments she's disagreed with in the past to stand by the side of that person when everything that I've done here, every element of this particular drama, has been escalated and instigated by other people. That's not an exaggeration. Every time some new person has gotten involved, every time things have escalated, every time this has been brought back out, it's the other person doing so. I have not dragged other people into it. The only time I got another person involved directly of my own volition was with Kat Blaque, and that was in private DMs where I asked her if she wanted to talk, and she said yes. That's me avoiding drama, not trying to cause it. I thought I was being responsible. I thought this was a uncharacteristically reserved thing of me to do. But clearly, even that is not enough to prevent this. Oh, so the last thing that I want to say. I feel it fair to say what I DM'd Contra with afterwards, because 98% of it is just DMs that I sent, and I don't feel anything here is a problem or like a problem if leaked. It just seems like an extension of a public conversation. You know, it's a cap off to a convo. I don't think there's anything here which entails problems associated with leaking DMs. Wouldn't TBH? Guys, there's nothing here. Ask her first. She blocked me. Chat, calm down. Let me read what I sent. It doesn't matter. Chat, you're going to irritate me again. I want you to know what I approached her with, okay? That's it. That's not even leaking DMs properly, okay? This is what I said. If you think this is leaking DMs, then I don't know if you know what leaking DMs is, all right? I just want you to know the tone that I approached her with. I said, "Hey, Natalie, I have enough respect for you to message, and to clarify, rather than let a bridge burn quietly, as I have dozens of times before, with people I've liked less. You and I have both dealt with the consequences of being misunderstood and attacked for those misunderstandings, so I will skip the preamble and just say this. I don't want to debate, argue, or whatever else, and you are not obligated to respond to me, though I'd like it if we could talk at some point. The tweets you made today betrayed what I felt like was, at the very least, a severe bias against me and my arguments. You don't normally involve yourself in drama, yet your tone was incredibly harsh, at least for you. I will not move from my positions because I am right and confident in that rightness, and I have not, nor will I ever cede ground to bad arguments because they're being offered by people with different lived experiences than me. You've also refused to cede that ground, and I respect that. How many trans women, poorer and more desperate and more powerless than you, have given you that line? I don't know why you acted that way. I don't know if you really did come into this with a bias, but I am always willing to explain my points in full. If you're uninterested in them, that's fine. But if that's the case, please don't butt in the future. I get enough flack from people who make no effort to understand what I do or say. I genuinely don't know what Venom has been building in you to accuse me of acting like a savior of trans people. Be well, and hopefully I can provide clarity sometime in the indefinite future." Those were my messages. I feel like that's fair. And I feel like any perceived negativity read into that is warranted. That sounds a bit iffy, IMO. I don't care. Did she respond? She did respond, which I won't read. But the summary of it was, essentially, she believed that I was being cartoonishly overconfident and rational in DMs, and that it wasn't worth the effort speaking to me. Then she said bye. And then she blocked me. The unfortunate conclusion I have to draw from this is that there was nothing that I could do, or could have done, throughout this conversation, which would have allowed me to maintain what I consider to be the correct position, while also not having this bridge be burnt. And if there's nothing my behavior could have done to have changed the outcome, I don't think I can be held responsible for the bridge burning. I think this is a huge L on her part, and if this is really just being done because of lunch table politics, you know, like she just had a friend, it's all high school drama stuff. I mean,
I think we should work together as much as possible instead of splitting into little factions, because we share most of the same interests. And I think the best way to do that is to build bridges instead of burning them.
I do find it very disappointing. I have no doubt her videos will be good in the future. They've always been spectacular, but you know. Anyway, we will be mass banning people from my subreddit who take any position other than the correct one, which is mine. Also from my chat and from my Discord. A purge the likes of which you have never seen. The reason for that is because I deal with antagonism everywhere online, everywhere, all the time. And I think it's fine to want one little place where I don't have to deal with these arguments 24/7. There were a lot of people here in my community and chat who were defending Contra throughout all this, but Contra never actually posed an argument to me in public. What am I supposed to take from that? Anyway, I want to conclude this with the actual argument that I have, because I still see all the time on Twitter, people are saying, Vaush, just take the L on this one. Why can't you just admit being misogynistic is bad? Which demonstrates a remarkable unwillingness to actually pay attention to anything that I've been saying, okay? So, you all have been around the block with conservatives long enough to know that one of the most effective strategies to attack a position or a person is to repeat arguments they don't believe in and indignantly challenge them for believing in them. So, for example, J.K. Rowling constantly says that that trans people want to erase sex as a concept. You've seen that from her, right? All the time. You've seen that from her so many times. That's like her main talking point, really. Now, no trans people want to do this. It doesn't mean anything, but she says it all the time. And her followers say it as well. And we're constantly playing defense against accusations that have nothing to do with our actual beliefs. So am I. My position is not, and never has been, that ironic misogyny is morally good or necessary for advocacy. I think that being able to be edgy is pretty necessary for forming a united front against the right, in a broad sense. And I agree that there are definitely a lot of people on the left who are overly sensitive to this stuff, but that's not the same as me defending the ironic misogyny, you know. I will say what my actual argument is, though. My actual argument is as follows. I will demonstrate it through the use of two hypotheticals that I think accurately demonstrate two things. First, the potential harm of engaging in behavior the online left engaged in, and second, the potential benefit of engaging in a different kind of behavior. So I will do both now, okay? The first example is with the Black Lives Matter protests. Now, as we know, the vast majority of the Black Lives Matter protests were peaceful and millions of people participated and it was great and good, and you know I'm in favor of this, okay? There were also looters, arsonists, and rioters. Those are real things that actually did happen and did exist. And while riots are a thing, while looting and arson is a thing that tend to accompany mass protests, that doesn't mean they're good in and of themselves. Oftentimes, a lot of innocent people get hurt. You know, people's personal property gets destroyed. People get injured, sometimes even killed. It's not good, right? Now, what conservatives did and will continue to do, and still do right now, is hyperfixate on the riots and the looting and the arson as a way of distracting from the broader Black Lives Rally movement, right? They do that all the time. The goal there is to take something that's pretty clearly bad and use it as a focal point so that they can avoid dealing with the optical and rhetorical issues associated with the real argument. Just like how J.K. Rowling will use the idea that trans people and trans activists are misogynistic as a way of pushing for her broader argument through implication, the argument she holds, which is that, you know, trans women are a threat to, in her words, real women. The strategy is exactly the same. Now, with regards to the Black Lives Matter protests, the strategy the left adopted was the correct one, okay? What did people on the left do? What did I do? Well, for the most part, we didn't really talk about the riots and the looting and the arson that much because you're kind of missing the point by doing that, right? Like, it's already kind of an overstated element of the conversation thanks to conservatives. Conservatives are only talking about that. Mainstream media is constantly fixating on that. Why add to it? Why not focus on the real issue? If you're in a heated conversation about this, you know, why, if a conservative brings up like cities burning down, would you then hand-wring over it and start giving them time and attention, letting them dictate the conversation by agreeing with them about how bad this is and, oh, I wish it wasn't happening and, oh, you're right, and making independent Twitter threads about how people in these cities need to stop looting and stop rioting and stop doing arson? Would you all agree that would not be conceding a point to the conservatives? I think that it would. Now, you can acknowledge that the looting, rioting, and arson are bad without taking this momentous social opportunity, this big surge of drama, to dedicate more attention to that element than is necessary. I hope you understand the point that I'm making here, yes? The point is, when the right is trying to hyperfixate and exaggerate a small bad element in order to push a broader point by implication, attacking a good thing, what you need to do is not buy that strategy. Don't buy into their, you know what it's called, concern trolling. Because they don't really care about the rioting. They care about Black Lives Matter. They're using rioting as a way of getting an easy wedge in. Don't give that to them. If you guys were to cede this ground every chance you got, you would realize there is never an end to it. Guys, when you're arguing with racists, there is always a black guy who did something bad. If you're arguing with Nazis, there is always a Jewish person who did something shady. There's always a woman who did something bad. There's always this person or that person. There's always an element of progressive something that they can focus on. Don't let them dictate and control what gets discussed. And for God's sake, when J.K. Rowling is digging through Twitter to find people to screenshot or quote tweet, which she's been doing for years now, she'll do this to trans women with like no followers. She's always going to find something to look at. Don't look at that and go like, oh, well, look at the behavior of this tiny account she quote tweeted, and compare it to her. I'm a tiny account, relativistically, you know, but any size, and agree with her about how harmful that thing is. And yet in this conversation, both Kat Blaque, Contrapoints, have explicitly said that J.K. Rowling has a point, at least part of one, in saying that misogyny in trans women is a problem. I do not think so. And I don't think that conservatives have a point, even a part of one, when they say that black people are criminal. Even though black people sometimes commit crimes, I don't think they have a point, because the point there isn't technically, is there anyone doing this? Their point is that this is a massive problem, and the existence of this problem justifies my broader political point. You do a lot of damage to the ability for left-leaning people to find solidarity and to work against conservative narratives when you buy into their concern trolling every time. So don't do it. That's my argument. Not that the ironic misogyny was good or isn't worthy of criticism, but that the attention that was given to me was disproportionate after that, when people on the left probably could have, taken advantage of all the attention that the J.K. Rowling beef was getting. I mean, for goodness sake, news articles were written about that. When was the last time a beef on Twitter got J.K. Rowling news headlines? Isn't that ridiculous? Don't you think more could have been made of that? More dogpiling? But it's a wasted opportunity. What I'm advocating for is the strategy the left generally does. They didn't do it this time because it was me. J.K. Rowling has screenshotted and quote tweeted trans people being problematic before, and it did not warrant this response from the online left. This happened because it was me. And I really do feel like the insistence that after saying all of this, I'm just defending misogyny is a kind of projection. Or maybe bad faith? My arguments are clear. I can only assume at this point that if, after all of this, you're still saying this is just defending misogyny, then you're doing what J.K. Rowling does when she says trans people want to erase sex. You're deliberately avoiding a real position in order to hyperfixate on a made-up one. The second point that I want to make, very briefly, is the potential benefit of taking the opposite side and really leaning into it. Because this is something that we've done quite a few times, When Ben Shapiro gets ratioed by a person calling him short, if a conservative politician got angry by that, the American people are tired of women, meme, she would quote tweet it and go look at this misogyny from the left. Well, that is a misogynistic joke, is it not? But you can then make fun of her relentlessly. And I think there's a lot of potential good that could be done by playing up the fact that conservatives are massive triggered cry-bullies, I feel like, in my experience, many of the people who I've moved over from the right moved over because they realized that people on the left, namely me, were capable of having a sense of humor and a thick skin, and that people on the right, namely them, were actually quite easily offended and really easily triggered, And I feel like playing that up can be done quite easily. And you can do that without being misogynistic either. If J.K. Rowling is screeching about how trans people are a threat to cisgender women because of something that I said, you don't have to go in there and be misogynistic to her. Why not call her a crybaby who's literally one of the loudest voices in the oppression of trans people, and she's screeching over Twitter posts. Why not say that she's triggered and causing real harm while fixating on tweets? Like, why not lean into that, you know? Point out that she's being weak and hypocritical. Point out she doesn't really care about women's rights because she attacks women all the time, that she sides with conservatives and actively, you know, praises and defends conservative organizations as long as they're also anti-trans. You can do all of that without ever saying ironic misogyny is good. Generally, the left engages in this behavior. They didn't this time because it was me. And none of this means you can't criticize me. But disproportionate criticism to the point that the online left is fixating on me instead of the billionaire transphobe is harmful to trans people, because it means that when the circumstances are right, you're more willing to eat your own than you are to form rank and attack, with the attention you've been given, the real enemy. And I have to say, the people in the online left who were treating me and J.K. Rowling as equal evils fighting each other are revealing how little they actually care about harm to trans people. If you're pretending you care about the well-being of trans people, and you're equating me and J.K. Rowling, you do not care about harm to trans people. And there were a lot of people saying that, you know, oh, let them fight, Vaush and J.K. Rowling. You don't care. What you care about is your social club. And you think that she and I are the same, or that I'm worse because I'm closer to them. I'm more adjacent to you in the social network on Twitter, and you see tweets about me more often than you see tweets about Rowling, so you think that I'm the worst one. That is a very selfish and self-centered way of advocating for minority groups, because it's not really doing that, is it? That's just embarrassing. Can I just say that? That's just embarrassing. To pretend that you care about trans rights and then to make that equivocation. That's embarrassing. I had issues with the ironic misogyny, but anyone that equates J.K. trans. Okay, chat, if you have issues with the ironic misogyny, I don't care, and if you repeat it again, I'll ban you. Because everyone, including me, has already acknowledged it. Everyone. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know who you're trying to like ward off criticism from. We all know. I really do feel like a lot of the hate that I get online from the left are people who despise the fact that I can't be bullied out of the positions that I hold the way everyone else in the left can. And you people want me to be more like them. That's what you want. Oh, Vaush, just take the L on this. Just take the L. What, cede to peer pressure? No. What, be more like them? This lunch table politics bullshit? I don't give a fuck if I lose friends on here. I have a real life outside of this. If I care about making friends, I will go outside and femboys off Tinder, okay? I'll go meet people at bars. I'm not on here to make friends. I'm on here to make fat stacks and convince hundreds of thousands of people how to best argue against conservatives. I don't give a shit. Oh, mommy and daddy Contra Vaush are breaking up. I don't give a You know how often I talk to Contrapoints? I don't think I've talked to her any time in the past 8 months, okay? I don't have friends on here. That's not true. I do. But I shouldn't rely on their continued existence. I do have friends on here. Let's not overstate the case. It's okay, Peacekeeper. I love you. Don't you think the whole I'm right, you're wrong mentality encourages this kind of behavior? No. Never cede into the abusers. They want you to think that being confident is what they have a problem with. They want you to believe, oh, things would be so much better if only you were weaker and more susceptible to peer pressure. If only you were less confident, we would stop harassing you. Never give in. They don't want me to be less confident. They want me dead or gone. If you don't think that if I killed myself, half of these fucking abusers on the online left wouldn't be cackling over it, you are wholly mistaken. These bridges are burnt beyond repair, my friends, okay? I will never cede anything for the sake of optics with these fucking people, okay? Never in my life. I will tear this entire goddamn community to the ground before I cede even the slightest point for the sake of getting them off my back. I do not care. I will never care. I'm building my nest egg, all right? I'll do this shit for as long as I can. I will never in my life back off. And if more people were like me, the left would have won the online space years ago. If more people in the online left were like me, if they could be like me, then there would be no fucking chance for the conservatives. But unfortunately, doing this is hard. And it's tiring. Even for me. What does winning look like to you? Winning? What is winning? Winning isn't an end state. Winning is a state of affairs. You never have won. You can only be doing better. Winning is a process, not a destination. You'll have never won. There will never be a point where winning is a thing that took place in the past. There's only doing well against the forces that be. That's it. That might be a bit far. The conservatives might be able to pivot to some new strategy. They aren't always incompetent. Conservatives are not incompetent when it comes to effectively advocating for their politics. Incompetence in this respect is what we are. The left is bad at that. The right is exceptionally confident. But I, in my opinion, am also exceptional. And if other people could be exceptional in the same way, then we could overcome any rhetorical, any optical strategy they put forward. I just wish more people were willing to adopt these mantras, this confidence, you know? I'm not saying you all have to strut around like gigachads in your day-to-day life, but the fact that even in my community, people are begging me to take the L after Contrapoints dedicatedly tweets a chain of non-arguments and blatant id pull at me is very disappointing. What can I do to make you like me, at least in that respect? I don't even care if you disagree with me. I just want you to have a fucking backbone. Not even Contrapoints has a backbone. I respect her arguments and analysis, but like, come on, she deletes every tweet she puts out there. Let's not pretend that's some sort of ironic, flash mob pop-up bookstore strategy where she just wants her tweets to be enjoyed but for a few minutes. She tweets because she's impulsive and deletes it because she doesn't want to deal with it. Will she delete those tweets with me? No, she cared enough to burn the bridge publicly. In my case, she's going to stand by this. It figures. The one thing Contra decides to have a spine on, and it's being wrong against me. The one issue for which she decides to finally take a stand, and it's quite possibly the stupidest thing I've ever seen her do. Do you think she was mad you brought up the addiction stuff? It was only briefly, but when you were replying, you did mention it. Who cares? Natalie has explicitly stated that she's had substance abuse issues that were exacerbated by the harassment that she received by woke scolds. I wasn't mocking her or making fun of her for it. I wasn't condemning her, moralizing it. The tweet that I'd considered sending was saying, the behavior you're engaging in was the behavior the people who drove you towards substance abuse engaged in. I don't think there's anything morally wrong or objectionable with saying that. I just felt like that would be an emotional escalation that I didn't want to account for in that convo, so I didn't say it. But I don't think it's wrong of me to say. I don't even think it's spicy. She's explicitly said that. I'm not like dropping like crazy news or whatever. Like, I'm not like leaking anything. Vaush, this is probably a super dumb question, but would conservatives try to one-up you by acting like you as well? They try. They can't. They have to be smart to do it. It doesn't work. Unfortunately, the problem is what I do becomes a lot more difficult if your positions are undefendably stupid. I understand that sounds conceited, but like, imagine how much harder what I do would be if every single point that I wanted to defend was incorrect, like objectively. That's definitely to their disadvantage. Like I've always said, the greatest advantage the online left, the left broadly has, is that we're right. Isn't that a great advantage? Honestly, this obsession with bridges is breaking out of a lot of parasocial thinking. Listen, okay? We're not burning bridges. First of all, I haven't burnt shit. Other people are torching the few bridges I have, okay? But they're not even torching bridges, okay? They're burning chains, all right? Unleashed, all right? We're like Hollow Knight in the Temple of the Egg, okay? The chains are being broken.
And believe me, I am well aware that jokes, irony, and even complaints about cancel culture are often used by bigots to cloak their real agenda. I've also become very disillusioned with the way these accusations are thrown around so frivolously on social media, by the way they're used to escalate conflict instead of promote understanding, and by the way they're sometimes weaponized to destroy people who have made mistakes, but who really don't deserve to be destroyed.